Great, we can see people coming on already. Good evening, everyone.
Hello, everybody. Nice to have you here.
Welcome along. This is exciting. We're going to get started right on 7 o'clock. We know this time of year is a really busy time of year, so we want to make sure that we've got everybody in and on, and then come 7 o'clock, we're ready to start. So we've got 3 more minutes yet to wait for people to pop in. So thank you very much for being here, everyone.
The popular one, Tansy.
Oh, good. Great.
Yes, good one. Hi, Tony from Horizon School. Nice to see you.
So lovely.
Not that I can see you.
Lovely for you to be online. Thank you. Carol Ann, you've been a long-time supporter. Welcome online. Thank you for coming. Got some new providers too, which is lovely. Thank you.
Hi, Jill from Connect.
Mindful Directions. We've got Stephanie. Hi there.
And Faye from My Grow. Thank you, Faye, for coming on. And Sean.
It's lovely. Lovely to see everybody. Thank you. 2 minutes to go.
Kia ora, Chelsea. Thank you for being such a good supporter of us, Waitoki School.
There's Claire. Hi, Claire. I've known Claire since 2001, probably. I know. You know, I must have only been 5 at the time. I think if you've been in education a long time and you start explaining your career, you think you must have started when you're 12. When you've done lots of different things in education. So there's Renee. Lovely. Oh, lovely. That's great. Thanks, everyone. So we've got a couple of minutes left to get everybody in and on, and then we're going to make a start. Thank you. Awesome. 1 more minute, we'll just get everybody on.
Hi, Brooke.
Yeah, this is a really popular session. So obviously this is a hot topic, which is a bit of a spoiler alert, which is
I'm feeling a bit nervous.
This is lucky that we got the right night for it then. This is great. Yeah, thank you. So the last few people popping on now. Thanks, everyone. Good to go. I make it 7 o'clock. We like being punctual. Great. So hi, everyone. Welcome to our KidsLink seminar tonight on anxiety and big emotions. This is a really hot topic right now at the moment, as I'm sure you in your classrooms know. So we're really pleased to be able to bring this webinar to you tonight. I'm Julie.
And I'm Michelle.
We started KidsLink in 2012, but the dream for it started well before that. At KidsLink, we're all about working together to grow great kids. We are connecting schools, parents, and service providers for the best outcomes for kids and teens in New Zealand. Over the last few weeks, we've welcomed many new providers onto the site, all with a passion for helping kids and teens and their families. Our webinars are informing and equipping teachers with powerful, practical tools they can use in their classrooms, and tonight's webinar will do just that. So I would like to start by welcoming Tansy Benison. It's our pleasure to introduce her tonight. Tansy is a highly experienced clinical psychologist and the developer of Chillax. Fantastic name. A program designed to help children and adults navigate anxiety with calm and confidence. With nearly 20 years of experience working across New Zealand and the UK, Tansy has supported adults, adolescents, children and their families in a wide range of mental health settings. She has delivered numerous group programs in schools and regularly runs seminars and training for parents and professionals supporting young people with anxiety. With expertise spanning anxiety, child and adolescent development, attachment, autism, and mindfulness, Tansy brings deep insight and practical tools on tonight's session on anxiety and big emotions. We're going to run through Tansy's session tonight. If you've got any questions, pop them into the Q&A and we'll keep on track. Otherwise, we're handing over to you, Tansy. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Michelle and Julie. I just have to say thank you so much for having me tonight, and thank you all for joining us. I am constantly looking for ways to sort of reach many. I am very aware that there's only one of me, and I can never get to everyone that I want to. So I'm so grateful for this platform this evening, and for you all taking time out of your very busy lives at a very busy time of year to hear what I have to say. So thank you so much for joining me this evening. And I hope you all leave with some bits of information and some gems that you can start to apply tomorrow in your classrooms and in your homes. I will be talking specifically about education, classrooms, and schools, and how to improve that for all of us, including our tamariki. But all of the things that I talk about today are equally applicable to the home setting, and just to us as human beings generally. These are human skills. So I hope that this serves you not only professionally, but also personally. And I think the more of us who are on the same page, sharing the same messages, the better off we'll all be in Aotearoa. So thank you so much again to KidsLink, and thank you all for coming along tonight. Let's get started. I'm just going to start briefly with a little bit about me. My name's Tansy Bennison. I'm a registered clinical psychologist, currently working in private practice in Tauranga. I was actually born and raised in Canada, but to Kiwi parents. Both of my parents grew up in the Hawke's Bay region, and I'm first generation Canadian in my family, so I have deep roots in New Zealand, and was so lucky to have the opportunity to come to New Zealand to start university. I came in my first year straight out of high school thinking I would stay a year and then likely go back to Canada. And here I am, decades later, still here and with Kiwi kids of my own. So it's all worked out beautifully for me. I have such a love for New Zealand, and I do have such deep connections here with the people that I worked with, but also with my family. So it's been a neat experience being able to base myself here in New Zealand. I started my education journey in New Zealand at the University of Canterbury, thinking I wanted to be a speech and language therapist. And I did a year of that, which was great, but I just was just so enjoying my psychology papers that I was doing. And so I cross-credited everything and transferred into the psychology program, and ended up spending much longer at uni than anticipated. I ended up doing the postgraduate diploma in clinical psychology, which took nearly 7 years. And I've never looked back. It's been the best thing that I could have done. I love my job. What a privilege it is to work with the people that I work with every day. And I've learned so much about myself and my family in this journey as well. Once I finished my training at uni, my husband and I went on a big world adventure. We did years of travel, and we saw all sorts of different communities. We met so many amazing people with such diverse backgrounds. And the thing that I learned through my travels is we all share the same human need to connect, be present with one another, and enjoy a sense of belonging. The thing I learned through visiting communities who have very little compared to what we have in New Zealand is that childhood anxiety doesn't necessarily come with a lack of social economic status or low income. And that was really an eye-opener for me, because I just thought, well, if many of those needs are being met most of the time in New Zealand, why do we have such a problem with anxiety, particularly in childhood? And it got me thinking, and I think I've been trying to sort of find answers and solutions to those questions ever since returning to New Zealand after my travels. I am now a very, very proud mom of 2 children myself, and I have to say, if there's there's no greater teacher in the world than having children yourself. They're an incredibly grounding force, and they've forced me to do a whole lot of self-reflection that I never would have done had I not had these babies of mine. So my two children have been my greatest teachers, and I'm still learning daily um, from them being in my life. And applying a lot of what I'm learning as a mom to my practice, to my work day to day with the families that I work for. And I just regard that work as such a privilege, getting to know people on the level that I do. I know it takes a lot of courage and a lot of vulnerability to have some of the conversations I have with people. And I am always aware of just how brave and what a privilege it is to be having those conversations with people. I draw on a very sort of eclectic approach to the work that I do. I was CBT trained and was trained in cognitive behavior therapy at Canterbury, but have since found a real place of comfort in using acceptance and commitment therapy and mindfulness-based strategies. And I work very much from a family systems approach, so very grounded in relationships. And I've just seen the impact, the positive impact that that can have for families. Especially for teens and children. So I continue to kind of grow and learn in lots of different ways, but that's kind of my, I guess, my theoretical or my philosophical kind of grounding therapeutically anyway. So we'll move on to the next bit. And I just wanted to kind of open us up with this kind of idea of stormy weather in New Zealand, and particularly in our education system and within our classrooms. It's messy out there. It's sometimes I think we can feel like we're in a real tornado, a storm of emotion for many of us. And what I am certain of is that our teachers and our students are overwhelmed a lot of the time. A few of my thoughts around why that might be, and this is really only a beginning list. I'm sure I could talk just about this for a whole hour, but I'm sure you already know most of these things, if not all of them and more. But I just wanted to kind of start and just recognize or acknowledge just what we are dealing with in schools on a daily basis, and recognize the toll that that takes on all of us. So our teaching staff in particular, you know, they wear multiple hats throughout the day, and I think the line between, I guess the our roles are becoming more and more blurred, particularly in the education setting. You may have signed up to be a teacher, but so much of your role also involves social work and elements of being a therapist and a nurse and parent sometimes. So it's not as clearly defined as it once was, I believe, and because the educational context is complex, it's messy, and there's very, very high need that we're encountering every single day in schools. As you're aware, a child's home life comes with them. They don't check it at the door when they arrive in the classroom. So as a child enters the classroom in the morning, they bring with them all the other things that happened prior to them getting to school that day, and the night before, and the week before that, and the weeks before that. We can't just say, well, you're here to learn, so we'll just deal with that part and forget the rest. We have to look at the whole child and what they bring with them each and every day. A lot of those things they don't talk about, can't talk about, don't want to talk about. So we're often only just getting a little snippet of that story. So it can be really, really difficult to know where to even start with many of our children, because they bring a very big story with them into the classroom. And we're not seeing the full story all the time, but we can often sense that there is a big story there. So what children are bringing with them into the classroom is huge, and we can't deny it, but also it can be really anxiety provoking to not know what to do about it or with it. The school environment these days is an overstimulating environment. Our nervous systems were never designed to tolerate what is thrown at them within modern school environments. It's an incredibly overstimulating environment on a sensory level. The noise, the movement, the transitions throughout the day, the lights, the colors, there's so much going on within the school environment just on a sensory level. So for our kids to process that and keep up with the pace is actually quite a big ask. There's a lot of going on emotionally, not just for the individual, but within the context. Everybody brings their own set of emotions to every interaction, and that affects each of us through the interactions. Classrooms are getting bigger. Schools are getting bigger. And that all contributes to this kind of level of stimulation that our nervous systems don't tolerate very well on a chronic basis. And within that kind of larger system and increased demand and complexity comes the loss of a secure base. So what I'm discovering more and more is that our students aren't so certain about who their people are at school anymore. They kind of lose touch with that in the busyness, in the melee of the school day. Open plan classrooms didn't help this in terms of having a few different teachers within a really large classroom with many students. They didn't have one person who they could consider their teacher per se, and they certainly don't get much of an opportunity to create a relationship that creates a sense of safety and belonging for that student. So I think a lot of students start to feel like they get lost in the mix in large schools and large classrooms, and with overwhelmed teachers. There's just not enough hours in the day for school staff to get to know their students on that personal level where that place of safety can be established. As you're all aware, I'm sure, behavioral challenges are intensifying, and this kind of relates back to just the complexity of the lives of young people in New Zealand these days. And what we're also noticing, particularly since COVID, although it was present before COVID, certainly since COVID and the lockdowns, we're seeing a much higher level of school refusal. It's becoming widespread, and it's beginning earlier. So historically, we didn't see a lot of school refusal in those primary years. It was kind of more at that college level, sometimes at intermediate, but now we're seeing that kind of school refusal pattern setting in much earlier in a child's learning journey. And it worries me when a child has still got, 6, 8 years left at school, and they're already not wanting to go. And we know that as they develop through their school years and they get into more of the senior school at college, the demand is much greater. So if they're wobbling now, what is going to become of them later? And it's really tricky to teach a child who doesn't want to be there or who isn't there. And as we all know, in New Zealand, we have such limited community support and specialist mental health services for the under 18s. So really, I think schools are providing so much more than they were ever designed to provide because we literally just don't have the services elsewhere. You're very, very much on the front line, seeing all sorts of things that ideally would be those needs would be met through more specialist services, and they just don't exist, or they just don't meet the criteria or the risk threshold to get access to those services. So our under 18s are really, really struggling to even get a foot in the door to any sort of kind of support service based in the community. And on top of that, it's an incredibly confusing landscape in mental health services. It's always changing, and it is daunting to try and find your way through those services. So unless you have the guidance of someone who really knows the system well, it can feel very overwhelming and stressful. And for far too long, we really have taken the approach of being the ambulance at the bottom of the cliff. And I really truly believe that prevention is the way forward. And the earlier we start in terms of helping our children develop those emotion regulation skills, the better off we will all be. But how do adults teach those skills when they themselves haven't necessarily been taught them either? So that's a really, really important thing to recognize. What are we expecting of ourselves? Do we feel confident in those skills? And what I've discovered in my work in schools is that many adults don't feel confident in those skills because they themselves haven't been taught them explicitly. So just that's just a very short list of a very long list in terms of what we're up against when it comes to schools in New Zealand. And kind of considering even just those factors that I've mentioned, no wonder we're all stressed and overwhelmed. It's scary out there. just a moment of kind of recognition. And I just want to pause to say, and yet you continue to turn up every morning when I'm sure that some mornings it would just feel so much easier to stay in bed. So I just want to extend a huge thank you to each and every one of you for continuing to get up and face the challenges that you face day in and day out in an attempt to make a positive difference for the future of Aotearoa. So today's goal is to share some practical tips and ideas that to help make all of this feel a little bit less anxiety provoking, a little less overwhelming. I think sometimes just some simple tweaks and shifts can make actually quite a big difference. So let's crack on, let's get on with it. Just to say that anxiety isn't bad behavior. It's not deliberate. Guaranteed, if you asked anyone if they wanted to feel anxious, they would say no. We tend to want to get away from that feeling as quickly as possible because it doesn't feel good. So anxiety is a stress response, and it's not something that we're in control of. It's something that happens within our bodies. So when there's a perceived threat from the kind of protective system in our brain, primarily in the amygdala, it sets off an alarm in our brains, which then triggers a cascade, the release of stress hormones, a cascade of stress hormones that then kind of filter throughout the body, and they create a long list of body-wide changes. We change physiologically in response to stress. And I have to just mention that our amygdala, that alarm system in our brain, doesn't differentiate between a real survival threat, a real threat to our survival, like a tiger lurking, and, for instance, a threat to our level of acceptance in a social group. All of that part of the brain can do is just perceive threat, that it says, hey, look out, look out, look out, danger, danger. But it can't distinguish what type of danger it is. So the response in our body, the physiological response, is essentially the same, whether the threat is the tiger lurking or whether it is a threat of social exclusion or non-acceptance to the group, or even a threat to sort of our ego or our emotional safety by, for instance, getting in trouble in front of everybody, or being thought badly of, or being judged or criticized. So the physiological response is the same regardless of the threat. And if we don't catch that in the act, or if we can't kind of create a moment of pause or calm, our body will respond in the same physiological way as if there's a tiger lurking. So those intense reactions you see in children and young people are actually very real for them. It doesn't matter necessarily for them what the trigger was. It matters how it's feeling in their body, and it can feel very out of control, very overwhelming. And there's a feedback loop there from those body-wide changes back into the brain to say, oh, there's still a problem. There's still danger. There's still danger. So it just continues to cycle round and round and round. And sadly, for some children, that's their experience throughout the entire school day. They are in high alert. And they're operating more from their survival brain and their emotional brain rather than the frontal cortex, which is the rational, reasonable, I know better part of the brain. So we have to be aware of, the emotional place of any individual that we're interacting with, but particularly children and young people, because if they're in that stress response place, then their reactions and their responses to you will be very different than if they're calm. So just to kind of touch on the cognitive impact of anxiety and that stress response system, I mean, as I said before, there's lots of physiological changes that happen throughout all of the body systems, but in particular, when it comes to learning, it's really important to recognize that when that stress response goes off, when we're in that danger zone, what happens in our brain is we literally flip our lid. We go offline from that frontal cortex, which is where all the I know betters live. And we can no longer access that information when we're in that perceived threat zone. So this is really important for staff in education, because you could deliver the best math lesson of your life, but if your class is in a place of anxiety, they're not going to learn it because they need access to the frontal cortex to make sense of what you're saying and store it effectively in their memory. So the processing that's needed or involved in learning is actually that processing has gone offline. They're not able to access that part of their brain, even if they really wanted to, if they're sitting in their emotional or their survival part of the brain. So that's really, really important to kind of do a bit of a check-in with your students to find out actually where they are. Because if their lid is flipped, there's no point in engaging in teaching because you're literally wasting your breath. They're not taking it in, and you're going to have to repeat it over and over again later. What happens when we flipped our lid is that's when the worry really sets in and anxiety starts to take hold. We lose sight of the big picture and we become very doubtful about ourselves and our abilities. So we're not in a great headspace for learning when that happens. So what do we do? How do we calm the storm? I've got 3 key points that I'm going to focus on with the hope of you being able to take a few things away from each of these key points to just start doing right away. And I really hope that that will make a difference for you. So the first kind of golden rule is structure calms the nervous system. And I think traditionally schools are pretty good with structure. At times we've kind of veered away with it depending on our kind of teaching methods and, you know, how we're going about our teaching and our learning. But generally for children and young people, especially, structure is an anchor. It gives us something to kind of hold on to when it's a bit windy or stormy around us. So routines, visual schedules, they all help to reduce a child's uncertainty. So if you can create a school environment that is ritualized, that's habitual, that's consistent, that's predictable, then that is going to ease and calm that stress response straight away, because even if something happens that sets off that alarm, they have that sense of predictability. They know that at 9 o'clock, we're going to sit down on the mat and the teacher is going to set us up for the day. So that's an anchor. It gives them sort of a grounding in the school environment that they come to count on. So rituals, routines, visual schedules, making it known what the plan is as regularly as possible is really useful. Also giving warnings before transitions. So this can be like a visual schedule that you might write up on the board first thing in the morning. So as children come into the classroom, they can see the board and they can see how the day is going to run. And they can kind of prepare themselves for that. They then know what's coming. Also countdowns. So just a simple 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Or it can be something like, okay, in 5 minutes, we're going to be moving on to this subject. And then 2 minutes later, in 3 minutes class, we're going to be moving on to this subject. In 1 minute, we're going to be moving on. You will need. So just giving them a little bit of prior warning that the transition is coming up. When the transition just happens suddenly for the student, it might not feel so sudden for the adults, but if it becomes on suddenly for the student, then they're going to take a lot more time to adjust to that change, to that transition. Also calming cues, particularly in transition periods through the day. So when they're arriving in the classroom and they're expected to be kind of seated so that you can start, you might need another cue other than you just maybe starting talking. It might be that maybe you dim the lights or you have your own kind of special bell that you ring, or there might just be a hand signal, or it might be, something visual on the board. And then that brings the class, it gives them a point of focus, it brings them in and give them just a few minutes to kind of settle. It takes a little bit of time to still their bodies, and then you start. So anything that you can do to kind of mark those transitions and give them a little bit of warning is a great thing. Mind your tone. Adults are human too. We carry our lives with us emotionally and cognitively throughout our day. Children and young people are incredibly attuned to what we don't say. They're constantly looking at our body language. They're listening to our tone for cues that you're in a certain emotional space. So that's them trying to predict how this is going to go. They might have some ideas as they get to know you better in terms of what those kind of nonverbal signals mean. But they're always looking to those nonverbals to let them know, are we good here or are we not? And that is their brain using you as like a co-regulation device. Their brain is designed to look for cues from the safe person or the adult person or the primary caregiver in that setting to tell their brain that we're good here. So if there's any sense from a child that maybe this adult doesn't have it all together, this adult isn't in a good space, maybe this adult is using a harsher tone or is a lot shorter, or frustrated today, or is just being a little bit more critical, that is going to set off that alarm system in their brain to say, hey, maybe we don't got this. Maybe I need to take some control myself as the child because I don't think the adult has it under control. So things like those nonverbals, calming tone, the words you're using, the pace at which you're talking, all of those things are being noticed by children's nervous systems. And you want to, as much as possible, be giving the signal verbally and non-verbally that we've got this, we're good. There's no threat to our safety here. There's no tiger lurking. And you want to, as consistently as possible, provide that safe base, that place from which they can kind of come and touch base, get a little bit of reassurance, guidance, routine, and then go off. And when they can come back and forth from that safe base regularly through the day, they're going to be able to self-regulate themselves when they're away from the base a lot better. So we worry that, oh, we might be breeding dependence, or we might never get this child kind of off of us. But actually, some children just take a little bit longer to kind of be reassured and settled and calm. And once that happens in relationship at the secure base, then they're going to be more likely to try brave things and to go and do more things beyond that. So reassurance and that kind of safe, warm, secure base for a child is actually really, really important. And let's not underestimate it. Our teenagers need that too. They might act like they don't, but they're always looking for it. Who's my person? Where am I safe? Who can I go to? Who's got my back? They're always looking for signals. And like I said before, it's usually nonverbal signals that they're watching. And the big one is this person consistent? Are they predictable? If you're inconsistent, if you're unpredictable, if you say one thing and do another, that's signaling to them that actually, I don't know that I can trust this person because they're not predictable enough, they're not consistent enough. So I'm going to have to contain myself here and look after myself because I can't use them as an effective co-regulation person. And let's be honest, we're not always calm all the time. That's human. But even just naming that, verbalizing that is actually reassuring. We're all in this together. None of us are perfect. It's a work in progress. The other big key message that I'd love for you to take away from today is that we need to connect before we correct. The correction is useless. It's not going to be effective if there isn't a safe relationship that it's coming from. So as I was saying before, regulation happens through relationship. So we need to kind of connect with a person before we correct behavior. Otherwise, the defense goes up. If they don't feel safe, they don't feel connected to you, they're going to put on that kind of hard shell. They're going to put on their suit of armor, and they're not actually going to hear what you have to say in your attempts to correct. And over time, they're just going to start to push you further and further away. So first and foremost is just kind of validate the feelings first. Understand that, there's actually a function to behavior. It doesn't just come out of nowhere, and it will be serving some sort of purpose. Even if it's not a helpful behavior, there'll be something in it for the child. There'll be a reason why they're behaving in that way. So try and kind of just understand emotionally what is going on here and try to see the whole child, not the behavior, that this behavior is a part of a bigger story and a wider experience for that child in that day, in that week, in that year, in their whole life. And they're not doing this to hurt you or bother you. Children aren't often that deliberate. They're kind of at the mercy of their behavior a lot of the time, and it's up to us adults to kind of try and make sense of it. As often as possible, try and offer particularly negative or constructive feedback privately. Doing that in front of a classroom or in front of peers can be can cause a lot of unnecessary shame. And as soon as kind of shame sets in, then the message gets murky. All of our defenses go up, and we're probably not going to take that in the way that it was intended. And we're certainly not going to be able to use it in an effective way or a useful way. So again, create that sense of safety in the relationship that, you know what, I'm not going to make this harder than it already is or it needs to be. We can have this conversation, you and I, away from the eyes and ears of your peers. Again, using that calm tone, kind eyes, gentle posture, careful on the volume, just kind of be mindful of all of those nonverbals. And remembering, like I said before, consistency builds trust. They're constantly looking to you to kind of decide, you know, have you got my back? At the end of the day, are you on my side? And it's incredible, you know, what you can achieve with a student on behalf of a student when they trust you. But we've got to do the work. We've got to put in the time and the effort to actually build that sense of trust and safety with a young person before we can launch into the critique, the feedback, the constructive criticism. We have to put the effort into building that relationship first. And then they'll be more likely to hear all of the great things we have to say. But they need to trust that you're there for the right reasons, that you see the good in them. Because our kids can't see that for themselves naturally. They look to the adults around them to give them that message. And if you're giving them a different message, they're not going to feel safe with you. They're not going to feel like they can trust you, but also they are going to believe it, you know, that, yeah, people don't like me. I'm not likable. I'm not capable. I'm not a good person. And remembering that when we are anxious, we are much more sensitive to criticism or to rejection, sorry. So we become a lot more sensitive to being rejected, perceived rejection from others when we're feeling anxious. And that's just our brain's protective mechanism. You know, we're going to try and get out of that situation as quickly as possible if it's going to hurt us emotionally. And rejection is one of our biggest fears, regardless of age or stage in the lifespan. It's the last thing any of us wants. And that comes from our caveman brain. Back in the caveman days, you know, if you got excluded from the tribe, you died. And our brain still interprets rejection in the same primitive way that, you know, belonging ensures survival. And at the end of the day, that's why we all want to belong so badly, because our brain interprets that as a means of survival. So often, people ask me, well, you know, how do I create connection? How do I calm in the things that I say, as well as the things that I show through my nonverbal behavior? So I've just added a few kind of calming statements that, you know, some of them might resonate with you and you might be able to start using. Just validating something that is challenging. So just by saying, yeah, this is tricky, isn't it? You know, let's just take a breath together. All of your behavior, you want to be kind of trying to communicate that I believe in you. You can do this. You know, I'm going to walk beside you, but I believe you can do this. Even something like, let's just ride this wave of emotion and see what it turns into next. Or I wonder what this feeling is telling you. Wow, this is a sign that you're about to do something brave. You know, anxiety only comes when we're about to do something brave. You know, anxiety signals courage. We're thinking about doing something really courageous, taking a risk. Reminding them I can't do it for you, but I'll walk beside you. So you're not alone in this. I'm here. I'll help. And the most kind of basic one, but one that we don't tend to say a lot, is you're safe here. I've got you. We'll figure it out. I love this quote. When little people are overwhelmed by big emotions, it's our job to share our calm, not join their chaos. So remember that we're all susceptible to flipping our lid. And the last thing a child needs when they flip their lid is for the adult to also flip their lid. So our number one job is to do our very best to try and stay calm and keep our lid intact online, so that the child nearby can see that our brain is calm, which then signals to the child's brain that it can be calm too. And slowly but surely, it can use your brain to co-regulate and get that lid back on. And the third big message today is that teaching self-regulation skills is something we can do. We can teach calm, but it does take practice. It doesn't come quickly or easily. And it's an ongoing work in progress for all of us, regardless of what age we are. So I've got a few different ideas that you can start using tomorrow, I hope. Some kind of self-regulation skills that you can build into your classwork straight away would be something like starting the day or facilitating transitions with 2 minutes of calm. So for instance, that might include, just some belly breathing practice, some deep breaths from down in your belly, some diaphragmatic breathing. Maybe it's a mindfulness exercise. Just coming up with some grounding activities to kind of bring the kids back together before you start on to the next thing. I know a lot of classrooms that I've worked in use that, particularly at the beginning of the day when you're kind of settling into the class, before or after morning tea, again, before or after lunch, and then just before they go home at the end of the day. So regardless of what's happened, we have these rituals or these moments where we're just going to bring the energy in the room down. We're just going to calm things down. And we're going to say, hey, we're good here. We've got this. Regardless of what's just happened or what's gone on in your life today, we're just going to do this. And if that becomes a predictable, consistent practice, then at least our children are learning these self-regulation skills throughout the day, at multiple kind of intervals through their day. And those are going to be tools that they carry in their toolbox forever, and hopefully will come to rely on as they get older and in those moments when they flip their lid too. You can introduce something like a calm toolbox. So you might introduce a space in your classroom that is kind of a calming space, or maybe each student develops their own kitty of calming tools. And you can spend some time just kind of brainstorming ideas and developing different tools that would work for each individual. Because the things that calm me aren't necessarily going to be the things that calm my best friend next door, but if we can kind of brainstorm together lots of different strategies, then that can give us some choices to try out. And we might put something in our kitty and then take it out because it's no longer working. We might replace it with something else. So it can become sort of a group activity and a classroom focus. Some examples of things you might include in this toolbox is anything to do with the five senses in particular. So I know schools have this tricky relationship with fidgets, and I know that they can become a real distraction, but actually with children who are very much kind of in their bodies still, and they have a lot of energy that they need to kind of release on a regular basis, fidgets can really help to just kind of provide an outlet for that energy, particularly energy that comes with anxiety. So being able to fidget with something in their hands that's completely doable, they can still pay attention and be releasing some of that energy through their fidget. So it's up to you to decide, whether they do more harm than good in your classroom setting, but, fidgets can be a really useful part of that toolbox. Again, it could be a poster in the classroom, or maybe just some brief instructions around, or a reminder or some images about how to do deep breathing. Some teachers I know have set up a gratitude tree where, once a week, every student kind of puts hangs a card on the tree as if it's a leaf. It's just stating something that they're grateful for that day or that week. What we know for sure is that when we're grateful, we can't be anxious. They don't go together. So it's shifting that focus from all the things that are hard and overwhelming and grounding us into what we know for sure, what is. And there are lots of things that kind of pass us by in terms of what we pay attention to, lots of really great positive things that can actually reduce our anxiety. So bringing that practice of gratitude into your classroom as a ritual can be really useful. Or you might have just a little box, a gratitude box that students can kind of add to as they see fit, or on a certain day at a certain time, whatever works. You might have some mindful coloring sheets, even just a bottle with some glitter and some water in it that they can kind of shake and just watch the glitter moving about. Might be a soft toy in there, maybe some cards with some yoga poses on it, or a poster, books with calming themes, or calming images. Put around the classroom, even something that's got a nice calming scent like lavender, can have that in there. And again, each individual might have different things that they gravitate towards more than others, but we're really thinking about kind of that sensory world and bringing people back into their bodies. When we're anxious, we're usually kind of overthinking everything. And so if we can bring ourselves back into our bodies, that can often be the road to kind of a calmer mind. again, just getting into the practice of normalizing emotion, that it's absolutely okay to feel all that you feel. No emotions are banned here. It's okay. And particularly the negative emotions, because we're so quick to try and move away from anything that feels uncomfortable or bad. And a lot of the work that I do with the young people that I see is actually just normalizing all emotion, the full range. That's what it is to be human. Sure, some emotions are less comfortable than others, but actually they're just signals. They'll come and they'll go. We don't have to meddle with them so much. We just have to accept that this is part of being human. It's what we do in response to emotion, whether it's a nice feeling emotion or a less nice feeling emotion. It's our response to that that often does the damage. So the more we can kind of teach each other to just kind of breathe through, be still with that emotion, knowing that it will come like a wave. It will come, it will peak, and then it will dissipate. And we don't have to get in the way of that. We just have to give it permission to be there. And there's some things you can carry on doing even though you're feeling those emotions, but there might be certain emotions where you might just need to go a little bit more slowly. So just notice it, acknowledge it, and then carry on. Just kind of ground yourself in the storm, but you don't have to try and prevent the storm. You don't have to try and make the storm go away or move it on quickly. Just know that it's there. I'm in a stormy patch. This is what I'm doing to stabilize myself, and I know that this too will pass. And more than anything, it's up to us adults to really model our own emotion regulation. And this needs to be more explicit and allowed to our young people. It's like talk about our emotions. And I know with so many of the teaching staff that I've worked with over the years, this is not a comfortable place to be, because I think naturally as educators, we feel like we need to have the answers. And often in our emotional world, it's kind of part of the thing that makes us feel least confident. So we don't want to be teaching the wrong thing or be saying the wrong thing, but honestly, owning your own emotional world really helps to normalize and validate your students' emotional world. This is not an exercise in perfection. It's more about saying, hey, we're all working on this together. None of us get it right all the time. And I'm here. We'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. Let's just give it time. So own the mistakes, and just kind of take accountability that, hey, I haven't got it right all the time either. Mhm. So this kind of just reinforces my point so far. Don't worry that children never listen to you. Worry that they're always watching. So those nonverbals are powerful. So quick recap, the three sort of key messages today are predictability and routine build safety, connection soothes. So the power of that relationship, it's worth putting time and effort in early on so that the trickier times are so much easier to navigate. But that needs to be established before the trickier time, ideally. And that self-regulation is taught, and it always starts with co-regulation. Our kids always begin with needing to borrow our calm before they can create calm for themselves. So I need to be good at that. And that's a tall order for many of us adults. Certainly not something that I was taught a lot of growing up. And it's continued to be a work in progress for me too. So you're not alone if you don't feel completely confident there. So there we have it. Those are my key messages. I hope there have been some tidbits in there that are really useful and that you can take away. I just wanted to finish with just a little bit of information about the Chillax program, which I've developed with the help of some colleagues along the way, and I've kind of refined it over the years as I've kind of continued to work in schools. But I've designed this program really just kind of acknowledging that there's only a few of us really doing this work, and there's just such high demand that I was trying to sort of figure out, how do I meet the needs of our communities and of our country when there's really so few of us doing this work and so few services available. So based on the work that I was already doing in schools, I've developed the Chillax program. It includes eight comprehensive lesson plans, complete with teacher notes. And it's designed to be delivered in a classroom with your students. And each session is about sort of 40 minutes long. And it also includes the whole package. It includes student and teacher worksheets and booklets that can then be sent home and shared with whānau, so that the family is also involved in the learning and aware of the skills that are being developed at school. And the hope is that they can then also be used and developed in the home setting. It includes lots of different video links to kind of show strategies and explain things and support learning generally. And there's feedback forms if schools want to use the feedback forms, but there's no kind of pressure to do so. And it also includes a comprehensive list of books and resources to supplement the learning in the program. So if you ever feel that actually that's something that I would really like to introduce in my school or in my classroom, then please do get in touch. I love sharing what I've learned with others, and I just think the more of us who are kind of sharing these key messages and role modeling these skills, the better off we'll all be. And just a note too that there is also a 1-hour video specifically for parents that they can purchase and watch in their own time. All of the training for the program and the parent video is available online, so you can do it in your own time at your own pace. And that's the Chillax website, just there for your information. If you want to know anything more about the program or get in touch, please feel free to visit the website. And I or my lovely administrator, Tony, will be in touch with you as quickly as possible. And finally, just smile, breathe, and go slow. Thank you all so much for your attention. I hope you've enjoyed it, and thank you again so much for having me.
Thank you, Tansy.
Oh, wow. You know what I love so much about that, Tansy, is you can absolutely see the passion that you've got and the expertise that you've got, but you've made it so practical. There are things that teachers can do tomorrow in their classroom, and they're easy things. They're not difficult. They are things that you can just take the time to think through. So such practical ways of working with children in our world. I appreciate it. So I made a couple of notes, as I do. And one of the things that really stuck out to me is the way that children are not finding their tribe now. It's more difficult for them to find their safe space, and school needs to be that safe space for a lot of children. And if we can make our classroom environments and the way that we connect with children really it's so tight that it means that they've got that one person in their world that thinks they're great. I love the one-liners that you've got. You're safe here. These are big emotions. You've got big things coming. This is a sign that things are coming, that you've got to be brave. And my favorite one actually was the connection before correction. I think that's so important. And we have to see students as their own whole human. And I think if we can connect with children on that level, then we've got some ways of being able to then easily, gently show them some of those life skills that, as you say, lots of adults, we're still learning, and be open. So wonderful. So I really appreciate your time, Tansy, very much tonight. And if anybody wants to find out more about Tansy, she's also on the KidsLink website. You can find out some information from her there. But we really appreciate your time and energy tonight, Tansy. And I'm sure I can speak on behalf of the attendees and just say thank you so much for your calm and your presence and your way of explaining in such a way that means that we now feel empowered to make some easy, quick and really meaningful steps to be able to make life a better place for our classrooms and for the kids that we're teaching. So thank you all very much. We wish you all a very Merry Christmas. We're allowed to say that now. It's almost the 1st of December if you're watching this back. And
if you've got any testimonials for Tansy or for KidsLink, we'd love to have them to send them to michelle@kidslink.co.nz. I'd love to share them on social media.
Yeah, we're really keen to get as many people along to these webinars, as many as we can, because as Tansy said, the more people out there that know this information, we can start a movement. We can start a movement and we can save each classroom one child at a time. So we really appreciate it. So yes, any feedback about tonight or other events, other topics that you'd like to be interested in learning about for next year, anything, we're really open and want to be able to communicate with our community, with our tribe. So thank you for being part of our tribe tonight, Tansy. We really appreciate it. And thank you for the attendees tonight. We'll be back in touch in the new year with what's coming up next year. And all the best.
Happy summer.
Thanks, everyone.
Mm.